Man, Season 3, I think, was a huge turnaround from Season 2. Season 2 to me was a massive disappointment, and it was something that I couldn't wait for the next season to come, but this season I quite enjoyed. Today, I want to break down my review here of what we saw within Warzone, Black Ops, Cold War, and everything in between that was introduced with Season 3 and where it stacks up. As we go along, let me know your thoughts down below. Agree, disagree, whatever it is, feel free to let me know your thoughts. Of course, your opinions aren't naturally welcome. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what we saw with this season, but as well, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like down below, and of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Warzone, Cold War, and anything COD related, especially as we gear up for Season 4 here in just a couple of days. So that said, let's dive into the review. So for this review, I want to start out with Warzone, just because I play that more than Cold War. I played the majority of my time in Warzone, but I'll be totally honest with you, I really enjoyed this season by comparison to last season. We did a review before the end of Season 2 last season, in which I kind of felt like it missed the mark. Last season, the entire season felt like filler. Nothing really happened at a decent pace. We saw that zombies outbreak go for 8 weeks, and the only real build-up and flashpoint of that outbreak was in the final week. Everything else before was just kind of like drawn out as a placeholder. But to kick off the season with a nuke event, that was really cool, and of course something that we had been waiting for ages. I think it was like Season 3 that we ended up first finding out that there was a nuke in Verdansk within Warzone. We of course later saw that that was part of the storyline unfolding within Modern Warfare storyline, where Price stopped Zakayev and Task Force 141 then emerged, and that was kind of the end of that story arc. But we then found out that there was more to this, and with Cold War's integration, that was their tipping point to do a time jump here with this. Now, going into it, I think having realistic expectations played a real big part in my enjoyment of it, especially because having seen Black Ops Cold War's event last year, seeing that it was a cutscene to reveal after some things we could do in-game, I wasn't really expecting us to be in Verdansk as the nuke went off and sort of watched it in-game real time, like a larger-than-life Fortnite style, like Travis Scott level event. I just kind of thought we'd get a transition into a cutscene and go from there, and that was essentially what we got. Though to be fair, even though it was spread across 2 different days, I thought they incorporated player engagement pretty well, or at least by comparison to what we'd have in Call of Duty. Trying to fight off the hordes of zombies in Verdansk, and if you died, you ended up turning into a zombie firstly. That was pretty cool. Then following up on the second day, we tried to launch the nuke in Rebirth Island, and some people got lucky enough they actually did, my squad included. We ended up snagging that last second, but then that immediate transition afterwards into Verdansk 84, that was an incredibly welcome surprise. I had absolutely no idea we'd go from Rebirth Island, launching that nuke, to a cutscene, then dropping right into the new map. I thought that was really cool, where there was no trailer or anything built up to it. You were just kind of thrust into it as a player. So I wasn't expecting that at all. That was an incredibly cool surprise. But when it came to that new map introduced with Season 3, or I guess new map in a sense, I know that a lot of people were bummed out that it wasn't a truly new map, but instead was a different variation of Verdansk. That I understand any frustration that came along with it, that there's still only a few brand new areas or completely retooled areas within that map, and it's not brand new. But for what we'll see for likely the next year or so to come, I'm a huge fan of a couple of things that they did here at this. Not the sun's glare in general and that overall hue to the environment, which feels like an awkward greenish blue tint. That stuff I could do without, but outside of some of those larger areas of play like Summit, the rework to downtown in some fashions in other areas, the smaller bits are what I really appreciate with this new map. There's so many more buildings and areas that have ladders and accessible points that make those previously one-way angles that I had huge issues with in year 1 of Warzone so much more accessible. Is there still work to do? Absolutely. Now I'm looking at you directly, ATC, Top Apps, or Hotel by Graveyard, and those sort of 2-stairwell, 3-story buildings with cubbies on them, but overall, some great strides were made, I think, in terms of flanking maneuvers and being able to take over previously impossible angles and areas. There's a lot of buildings in downtown in particular that have ladders that did not beforehand, that you can end up reaching roofs, making strafe jumps to other roofs, and other things like that, but I'm a big fan of those smaller things that can really help the quality of life. Another big adjustment here that was made in the way of Warzone was that of weapon balance and communication. This season, I think, is perhaps one of the first times in Warzone where there was no clearly defined meta. I mean, think of it. With Season 2, we saw that it was basically all for 8 weeks of play, the FFAR and AUG or M16, insta-melt weapons. Same thing with Season 1 and that integration of Cold War weapons. The DMR and Diamatti, I don't think lasted the entire duration of Season 1. I think it was about like 5 out of the 8 weeks that it was a real problem, but that was probably one of the worst metas that we had seen. It was a 2-shot with the DMR at basically any range. Season 0 of Cold War was kind of an extension of Season 6 of Modern Warfare, which was basically the CR-56 AMAX as that main meta. Then we ended up seeing Season 5 was the Bruin and Kilo. Season 4, Kilo, maybe a little bit of that Bruin crossover. You get the picture with this, right? I mean, before that it was the Ground, the M4, but that basically paints the picture of the general meta over the last year. But with this last season, it's been really nice, I thought. There really isn't anything that's too terribly dominant. I'd say, of course, the CR-56 AMAX is still right up there with the king, but there's other weapons that are absolutely phenomenal choices, and you can take definitely in place of that. Honestly, when I think about weapons that can stand a fighting chance and win gunfights easily, I can absolutely think of the Krig, the XM4, the AK-47, the MP5, the Bullfrog, the MP7, the PPSH, the AS Val, the FFAR is still valid, the PKM, the Kilo's decent, and the Grau, that's still solid. There's probably like 20 to 25 weapons that I feel belong in the pool of weapon choices for once, which is phenomenal for weapon balance. It's awesome to see that in most cases when we talk about like the top 10 weapons in Warzone, it's usually a sharp drop off where weapons near that 10th and final listing aren't near as good as the first ones we talk about. But realistically, when we talk about the top 10s this season, every single weapon in those lists stood a chance and could provide you with a great level of play. Honestly, I applaud Raven for that because objectively speaking, rooted in statistical data, this has been the best season for balance yet. I mean, for perspective, you have 16 weapons that are within 200 milliseconds of each other for time to kill, which makes for an incredibly healthy variance in play. Now, as for the content that was specifically added in with Season 3, the map itself we already mentioned. That's not anything that I really want to go over twice here, but outside of that, with the mid-season update, that 80s Action Heroes event was awesome, I thought, truth be told. I love when they do licensed crossover stuff like that, and it was happening again here at Warzone with the Haunting of Verdansk event. We saw that there was Jigsaw in the Saw series, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, and so that was the first time that we had seen things like this since Call of Duty Ghosts. What was that, like 6 or 7 years ago at that point? So it was nice to see that happen, but we also then saw even bigger franchises potentially in the sense of Die Hard and Rambo, some classics here that fit that 80s theme perfectly, and it was nice to see them introduced here. Now, granted, I absolutely would have liked them to introduce these operators as something of challenges or some organic way you could end up unlocking them, but I understand that's sort of the precedent we've seen with any DLC operator outside of the Battle Pass is they're paid for bundles for about 20 bucks. I wish that it wasn't paywalled, but outside of those operators, the stuff that came along in-game was actually really cool, I thought. The survivor camps in the CIA bunker weren't anything too major, but Nakatomi Plaza was a huge centerpiece for Verdansk and Warzone overall. That Easter egg that came along with it, while Specialist annoyed me to die to somebody with it, it was an incredibly high-risk, high-reward scenario that, truth be told, if you could pull it off, was absolutely worth it. You walked away with $100,000 in cash and BR, $500,000 in plunder, plus a lot of things that could really set you up for the rest of the game. And of course, being somebody that loves Easter eggs and going for these quests, it was always really fun to do this kind of stuff here, even if it wasn't something that I would go for outside of the first week or so. But I really enjoyed that Nakatomi Plaza. I quite enjoyed even sticking around here after the 80s Action Heroes event finished up, and we still have some levels of play. And truth be told, even though I was a little bit skeptical of having such a large building, so many levels of play, I kind of like it, and I'm kind of going to miss it here once it goes away for Season 4. Overall, though, I truly thought that this season for Warzone was an overall dub. I thought it was a great stride forward. Again, weapon balance, new content introduced, a somewhat new map. Overall, I thought it was a net win. Of course, I could still pick apart things that I didn't quite like here with the season and what we didn't see in terms of maybe inaction on things like an adjustment to the perk of Ghost. Stopping power was adjusted, but I still find myself dying to it quite a bit, and other things like that. But overall, I thought that, again, it was more so net positive than net negative. Over on the Cold War side of things, admittedly, I didn't play this near as much as I did with Warzone, so my time is much more limited in that aspect. But from the time that I had played, we of course ended up seeing the maps of Yamantau, Diesel, Duga, and Standoff. I quite enjoyed Yamantau. I don't know quite what was about it that I just immediately jumped on, and I felt pretty good when playing the map. It just felt natural. Diesel is decent. I had decent games, I had bad games, but Standoff was that one that, man, I am just so happy that this ended up coming back. I love Standoff from Black Ops 2. I love all of Black Ops 2, so I'll happily take anything like this in that regard. So definitely nice, I think, to see that we saw 3 6v6 maps, whereas I think it was last season we only had, what, 1? And that was definitely a big bummer. So granted, it's not to where we were in the past where we had 4 6v6 maps, but it's at least better than it was in Season 2. Multi-team elimination, from the short period of time that I played around with it, that was a very fun mode, and that was something that, of course, gave players that were yearning for a Blackout 2.0 something to play around with and something to kind of hold on hope for. Will this be something that persists throughout the year? I guess we'll have to wait and see, but it was nice to see that sort of iteration of a Warzone version or BR version of Black Ops Cold War. For zombies, it was definitely nice to see that we had, of course, the new Outbreak region and, of course, the long-awaited Zombies Easter egg. I know that from what I saw, I haven't completed it, but kind of a bummer that it's just a minimal cutscene that we had here as the Easter egg reward. Not a whole ton going on with that, but there is going to be a secondary piece here, Easter egg part 2, if you want to call it that, with Season 4, and supposedly we're going to be getting the new map here as well in Season 4, but that right now has not been officially confirmed, if I'm not mistaken. I did like the weapons we ended up getting here for this season. It was nice to see 6 weapons, 1 every 2 weeks. We ended up having the PPSH and the Swiss K31 within the Battle Pass. Haven't played around with the K31 all that much still, to be honest with you, but the PPSH I absolutely love. The Carve 2 was nice, and it wasn't anything that really like broke any of the metas here within Warzone, at least. It was nice to see that that was balanced coming in. Same with the AMP-63, and then the Ballistic Knife and the Baseball Bat were, well, they're just niches. So those were pretty cool as well. Honestly, I thought the operators were pretty cool here at this season as well, both in terms of design, but also in the way they progress the storyline in the background with Stitch's master plan. I'm curious to see where that goes in Season 4, 5, and 6, and where we end up at the end of Black Ops Cold War's main year of support. But also, I loved the fact that we ended up getting Captain Price for free, just for simply owning Black Ops Cold War. I'm still not entirely sure where he pieces into the puzzle here with this, in, of course, the same age that he is in Modern Warfare 2019, but instead almost 40 years earlier, so that's a bit perplexing, but it is cool to see a free operator given just for simply owning the base game as well. So that was cool to be added in. And overall, truth be told, I didn't really play too much Cold War in the sense of giving you a definitively better than Season 2, definitively better than X season, whatever it may be. But from the time that I did play, it was very loose. It wasn't really with any expectations, but I enjoyed it. It was a good time so far, and so therefore, looking forward to seeing what the future holds here with Season 4 and what will be coming along with that. But that said, that is my sort of review here on Season 3, more so a discussion on what we had and some thoughts and feelings I had with all of it, but that's where we're going to wrap it up. Love to get your thoughts and feedback down in the comment section down below. Did you guys like Season 3, especially by comparison to Season 2? I honestly thought it was night and day, but that could just be me. Maybe you guys disagree, and that's totally fine. But whatever it is, feel free to let me know your thoughts down below. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to drop a like down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so I'm a single thing running all things Warzone, Cold War, and anything COD related, especially as we gear up towards Season 4 here in just a couple of days. So if you guys are interested in any of that, hit that subscribe button. I'd love to have you in the community. That said, if you also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, those are the best places to get connected with my side on YouTube. Probably live on both those. So if you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. That said, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.